Hi there, welcome to the Raven's Call. I am Eric Wordweaver Sjerven, Goldie of the Ridgar Folk here in East Texas, and I would like to welcome you to the show. This is a show where I ramble on about different heathen-related subjects, just kind of whatever comes to mind at the time, whatever strikes my fancy, sets my mind on fire. And this is just kind of my take on things. So the big UPG warning at the beginning of this is, these are just my views. This is not necessarily reflective of greater heathenry, not that there really is such a thing as greater heathenry. And that doesn't even necessarily reflect the individual views of my tribe members. It's simply just me and the way that I see the world. So some of the housekeeping things that we need to do before we get started. If you haven't already, please hit subscribe down below. Ding the bell so that you stay up to date on things. And then give the videos a big old thumbs up. Comment, things like that. I used to be able to get back to comments really quickly, and I haven't been able to do that lately, so I at least try to hit the little heart icon on them to let you guys know that I've seen them and I appreciate them. And when I can, I'll jump in there. I've seen some conversations strike up down there in the comment section that has been pretty cool. I like to see stuff like that. So I've even gotten some fan mail in through the P.O. box, which is really cool. I love that stuff. And I promised you guys if you send in fan mail, I'd show it up on the channel and everything. So this is this really cool little postcard here. Put it in front of the camera. And it's very, very neat. This is from Guillermo IV. Just a really cool little, postcard. And he thanks me for the videos and wants me to keep going with it. So I believe his organization he's with is Norse Play. I don't really know anything about them. I'm going to go look them up. But just wanted to give a shout out. Thanks for the mail in. I really appreciate it. If you guys send anything like fan mail, artwork, anything like that, I'd be happy to show it up on the channel and give you guys a little shout out, a little thank you. So I really appreciate it. I mean, I never really expected a community like this to grow up around the channel. I never really expected the channel to become anything, and then it's become this thing, and it's so cool, so neat to see all these people, like the regular commenters that are in there all the time. There's about a half dozen people that I can always count on to comment on videos. And then I always see new people pop up. I'm constantly seeing new subscribers. It's just really cool. So thank you all. Thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for subscribing to the channel, for being part of the community, and for just engaging in everything. It's really neat for me. So let's go ahead and jump into today's subject. And today's subject is something that's kind of near and dear to my heart, and something that even I don't practice enough myself, and I can tell when I'm not practicing it enough, and that is self-care. I touched on self-care before. I may not have necessarily called it that, but as you know, I'm in the field of psychology, and so that's something that we really focus on. There is this phenomenon called burnout, which I'm sure most, if not all of you, are very, very familiar with. And burnout occurs in all industries. It's not just healthcare industries. It's not just the psych world. It's not just, we see it a lot in like elderly care, medical care, but it also happens in just everyday life. In just whether you're working in a factory somewhere, if you're a mechanic, if you are a CEO of a company, it doesn't matter. I see burnout all across the board, and it's a known phenomenon, and it's something that it really, really takes its toll. And for a heathen, that's going to look a little bit different, but not necessarily all that different. Burnout itself is when you've just given too much, when you've expended all of your care, as it were. A lot of times it's called compassion fatigue. And that's when you've just cared so much that you just can't care anymore, and you feel yourself all kinds of burnout. Burnout takes on a lot of different kind of characteristics, but mostly you're going to see things like irritability, distractedness, and unwillingness to do the job. You're going to see your efforts in the job decline, and you're not even necessarily really sure why. You find yourself being easily irritated by things that normally wouldn't irritate you. You get to the point where you almost dread going to it. And it's easy to talk about it in terms of work because that's where we see it most of the time. Because when you think about it, work takes up so much of our time. Work takes up so much of our lives that we end up neglecting some of the things that really matter to us, be that family, tribe, our spiritual and religious selves, our physical selves, and it really, really takes its toll. And it can manifest in a lot of different ways. It can manifest in physical ailments. You find yourself getting sick a lot more easily. You find yourself just worn down and fatigued all the time. You find yourself feeling almost depressed a lot of times. And this differs from, of course, clinical depression, which I've talked about on this channel before, or even situational depression. If anything, it's kind of tied to situational depression, but it's its own beast. It's its own thing, because it comes from different triggering points, and there's different mechanisms that are at play here. And burnout is something that we all feel at some point in time or another, where you've just done something long enough that you're kind of done. You need to stop and recharge. And I'm sure all of us are familiar with those points where we get too disconnected, and we need to either reconnect with the things that matter the most to us, or we just need to slow down and take a step back and recharge. And so this isn't going to be a Psych 101 video on burnout, but I did feel like I needed to set some of the groundwork there with regards to this particular phenomenon. What we're going to be looking at specifically in today's video is how burnout affects heathens and heathenry, especially in the Western world today, because I do recognize cultural differences in the way that we approach stress and the pacing of our lives, if anything. I know that over in the UK, a lot of the same stressors still exist, but the pacing is a little bit differently. Same thing with mainland Europe in general. And then, of course, over in Asia, things are a different pace entirely in some ways. There are areas where things are slower and more relaxed, and people just seem to be happier. That's a thing that I really envy sometimes, because we do focus so much on our work and our careers here in the West that it takes its toll. We tend to become disconnected from those things that matter the most to us in life, and we have to go out of our way to really try and reforge that connection. It can be difficult. A lot of times you will find that marriages suffer because of it. Different relationships, friendships fall to the side. You find yourself just not wanting to go out and engage with friends on the same level that you were before. You just feel too tired or too busy. You simply don't have the time to connect with the people that matter. And one of my favorite kind of paraphrases from the Havamal is to never let the grass grow tall on the road to a good friend. And that's something that happens very easily when we are in a state of burnout, because we just don't have the energy or the drive to maintain those connections. And as we've talked about before, frith is maintained through reciprocal obligations to one another. It takes both giving in order for that frith bond to remain strong. Now, frith will absorb a great deal. So if you've got someone with whom you've built a great deal of frith, and this is an individual who's very near and dear to you, they'll understand. Frith will absorb a great deal of that. You're not going to find that friendship necessarily fall apart simply because of burnout, but it can if the neglect goes too long and the irritability leads to interactions that taint that frith web, as it were. So we try to keep that in mind as we go through and find a common balance, a kind of a setback, and let things even out. Then we're going to talk a little bit about how we go about doing that. And I say we because this is a large focus in our field. These relationships that this takes a toll on can fall to the wayside, and we end up just not giving these people the time that we need to. We're not reciprocating time, effort, gifts, attention. And that road, when the grass grows tall on it, it becomes derelict, and those bonds begin to weaken a little bit. Lesser bonds with whom we have, not really tied any frith to, but we still have some weird tied to because we have interactions, we are acquaintances, maybe light friends, something like that. Those can be significantly damaged during this time. And it takes a lot more effort to repair those. Of course, the amount of effort is somewhat proportionate to the size of the bond itself. someone with whom you hold very little bond, a little bit of neglect. It doesn't take a whole lot necessarily to get back to where you were. But as we all know, sometimes when we're tired, we're irritable, we are distracted. We can lead into behaviors that are reactionary, overly defensive. We can say things that do damage those relationships more than just neglect. That can actually be poisonous to that interaction. And the end result being that those are more difficult to come back from. We have to effect some kind of shield functionally. It's not really shield because it's not tied to the oath system, but you get the idea. It's that idea of recompense, that idea of working to make things better, to even the scales again. And that does take effort on our parts. So what we would like to see is an avoidance of that, to step in and put some stopgaps in place in order to prevent burnout from reaching that point. Because a person who is taken too far into burnout can find themselves hermiting away. They can find themselves distanced from their friends, from their family, from everybody that's important to them. And that's the very social structure that you need in order to make it through these kind of times. We are social creatures by nature, and heathens especially so, because heathenry is very socially based. Now, I know we've talked a lot about solitary practitioners and things like that before, but even you solitary practitioners out there have some kind of social structure that you've built up around yourselves. If not, you're probably seeing some effects of that. The social structure allows us emotional and social support that the human mind needs. We need, man seeks man. And that is, touched on in the Havamal. That's touched on in a lot of things. And just in general, tribal structures are very much built around that social support, social that union that occurs within a social construct. And so that's what we're looking at here, is trying to use that to help prevent some of this burnout element. We're also looking at some of the disconnect that occurs on a spiritual and religious level. Because if you look at when a person is burned out and they start pulling away from things, things begin to kind of fall to the wayside. Like things that you enjoyed doing previously, you may not enjoy as much because the hassle just seems too much. Again, kind of mirrors some of the symptomology of depression. You find yourself not necessarily wanting to engage in those things that you enjoyed before, not necessarily wanting to go through the effort of these things, or you find yourself burying in escapisms, distractions. It can be video games, movies, books, these things that we enjoy that do help take our mind off of things and can be part of self-care, can become a crutch, and we can delve too far into them to the point that we are using them as an escape and an avoidance mechanism. We're trying to stay away from those things that stress us out so much that we disappear into our assumed fantasy worlds, and we stay there and try not to come out. We will go out of our way to stay within those worlds. We'll play games for an extended amount of time. We'll get lost in TV shows and binge instead of interacting with humans, doing these things. Not that I have any problem with enjoying in. I'm a gamer myself. I love my video games. I love reading. I love watching movies and TV shows. All these things. These are things that I enjoy. I love the storytelling behind things. I love to engage in these immersive worlds. It's very fun for me. I really enjoy it. But I do find myself sometimes utilizing these things as a crutch. I do sometimes delve too far into it and distance myself from everybody around me because I'm just burnt out. And that's a thing. And burnout is on a spectrum. It's not like, one day you're fine, the next day you're burned out. You burn the candle at both ends long enough, and you'll get down to where you just don't have enough, and the light begins to start going out. And it doesn't happen all at once. It happens slowly and over time, which is why most of the time we don't notice it when it's happening to us. It takes its toll bit by bit. It's a nickel and dime kind of thing. You find yourself spending a little less time with friends and family. Eventually that ebbs even more, and then weeks go by. Months can go by, years can go by, and you don't realize that you've distanced yourself from these connections. And it's easy to do because we get wrapped up in the mundanity of day-to-day life. There are things that just have to be done. The chores have got to be done. Work has got to be done. These things that we need in order to survive. And we get so wrapped up into it because of the disconnect that's inherent in Western society that we just end up disconnected from the rest of our families. In the olden days, you wouldn't necessarily see this as much because all of that was tied in together to the social structure. Everybody was in a community, the same community, and interacted with one another on a day-to-day basis. So it wasn't necessarily like, you would go months without seeing your family, most times, because you're all typically in the same village, and you're all typically working towards the survival of that village. In modern day, our jobs take us in multiple different directions. The disconnect in Western society, which I've talked about on the channel before, allows us to be hundreds of miles away from family. It allows us to have friends on the other side of the globe. And we can maintain some connection through telephone, internet, things like that, but it's not the same as the face-to-face contact. Again, we've talked about that on the channel. All of this removes some of that social structure, that social support that we have, and we end up being isolated in our little worlds there. We can reach out and text somebody, we can talk on a chat kind of thing, and we can feel a little bit of that connection, but it's not the same as sitting down around a fire and sharing stories. We can play video games with somebody clear across the country, but it's not the same as sitting down on a couch next to each other and sharing jokes and laughing and everything while you're doing it. We can approximate that with voice chats and get pretty close to it, but it's not the same. I grew up playing video games, couch co-op with my brother, and later on my littler brother, when he was born. And so we would enjoy doing all these things together. We were the brothers three, and we would just laugh it up, have a grand time. And then I find myself in the modern day having more difficulty making time to be able to spend with my brother, something that's near and dear to my heart, that's recharging for me, that is extremely important to me, and yet something that I very, very seldom get to do because I'm tied up in work and home obligations and all these things that just take up so much of the time that by the time it's all said and done, I'm wore out and I just want to sit down and veg and watch something on the TV and then go to bed. I may log in and play a video game for a little bit and then go to bed. We fill our time so much with work and other obligations that we don't step back and take time for ourselves. We distance ourselves from family, we distance ourselves from friends, we lose ourselves in escapisms, like I said. One of the other things that we do distance ourselves from in this is sometimes our spiritual or religious practices. We'll go through the motions a lot of times. We'll still uphold traditions because traditions are important, and traditions keep us doing those things even when we don't necessarily have the drive to do it. That sense of obligation is still there and we still see it through, which is important because we need to maintain those connections. We need to maintain those connections to the divine and to our spiritual entities, such as the Vetir, especially our Husvetir, and our hearth gods, and our ancestors. So, like, even when I'm burnout, I still get up every morning and I go through my morning ritual with my Husvetir and with my ancestors. Even if I'm not wholly there, even if I'm barely awake, I still do it. I still keep up the traditions. I still keep up the ritual, and I put what I can into it. It gets difficult sometimes to prioritize that when things are just too busy, when things are too just pell-mell, and every second of the day is full, and you're wore out, and you're exhausted, and you just don't have any more to give. It becomes very difficult to set aside time to do things that are important, such as connecting with spiritual and religious powers that are recharging. We're burning our luck up without really feeding back into it. I, for one, think that there is a correlation between our luck and burnout, because I think that we run a lot of our lives off of our main, our spiritual energy, as well as our might, our physical energy, and that main is fed by luck. And so if we expend too much without feeding anything back into it, without recharging, we start to burn out and we start to run out. You can't keep doing that. You have to be able to step back and recharge a little bit. You've got to be able to step away from things and reconnect, recharge that battery, ground. There's among the magical communities, there's a practice called grounding, wherein you can focus your energies to balance out through the ground. You draw energy in from the ground and you feed energy back out to the ground, completing a circuit. It's like a grounded circuit in speaking in terms of electronics. And so the essence here is that you are helping to regulate the energies. You're recharging, you're getting rid of some of the stale, bringing in some new. And that's something that grounding kind of mentality is kind of the basis on how we heal and prevent burnout. Because you go through and you find different things within the realm of self-care that are good for you or that are recharging for you. Now, in general terms, when we're talking about self-care with regards to burnout, we usually focus on things like exercise. Exercise is a fantastic one because it engages the body, it raises the endorphin levels, and raises norepinephrine and serotonin within the brain. Just generally, you feel better and happier because you're using your body the way it's meant to be used. Even if it's something like working out, which is not, naturally speaking, without the ease of technology and without the convenience of the modern day, we would be living more physically demanding lives. There'd be a lot more physical work that we have to do. In raw, primitive terms, there's not a whole lot of desk jobs out in the wild, So we have to replicate that and kind of go through the motions through things like exercise regimes, exercise equipment, things like that, and going to the gym. It becomes a ritual in and of itself. And that's a key thing to think about with these self-care practices, is they need to become ritualized. They need to be something that you do for you. Just like you go in and you do ritual for the gods, do ritual for the ancestors, you do ritual for your folk, for your tribe. It takes ritualizing self-care for it to become something that you do for you. Whether it's setting aside a period of time where you get to sit and read and just kind of check out from the world and then you come back to it, or ritualizing a workout routine, or ritualizing a weekly bubble bath where you just sit and relax and let the worries of the world kind of drift away and you focus on you for a little bit. But here's the thing, that has to be done with intent. When you talk about ritual, there's the physical actions of the ritual, and then there's the intent of the ritual. Ritual that consists of intent without action is not a thing, it's simply a thought. You can have all the good intentions in the world. You can, you can have the intention of sending powers to, sending the exchange of luck with the divine. But unless you actually go through the motions of it, nothing actually connects and does. But if you go through the motions without the intent, then you're not really achieving anything either. It takes both in order to maintain that balance, in order for a ritual to be effective. And so you can go through the motions of self-care, but if you don't have the intent of self-care, it's not going to have the effect of self-care. In order for a ritual to have the effect desired, it necessitates both the physicality and the intent. The ritual and the intent. You have to have both of those to get the effect. So, in essence, with like blow to the gods, we can offer sacrifice to the gods and we can go through the motions on it, but if you're not putting your energies into it, if you're not, utilizing that intent to give gift to the gods, then you're not really sending anything. And it is an empty motion. It's an empty gesture. And you're not going to get the effect of luck exchange with the divine. It's just like if you reach out and send a text to a buddy, unless you have the intent of connecting with that buddy and having some interaction, it's just an empty gesture. Hey, how you doing? Doing all right, how you? Boom, done. Yeah, you've contacted them, you've had interactions, but you without the intent behind it, you don't really achieve anything. There's no effect. So intent is extremely important. Physical action of the ritual is extremely important. So you have to ritualize this self-care regime that you create. From a heathen's spiritual standpoint, things that we can do to help with our connection to the divine, to help with our connection to the ancestors, is to do daily rituals or to do weekly rituals. I wouldn't say monthly, I think that's a little too far out. But ritualize within the confines of your schedule to be able to set aside a little bit of special time to connect, and then make it about that. Make it about that connection. Use the intent of connecting with that power to bring effect to that ritual so that you get that recharge, so you get that surge of energy that will help you with the rest of the mundane stuff that you have to do. When we go through and we do ritual to the gods at all of our festivals, and I have to really focus on the intent of those rituals in order to make sure that the effect is there, and then I do a lot of honing on the actual ritual itself in order to help facilitate bringing that effect into reality. Because that's what a ritual essentially does, is it gives form to intent. You start with intent, give form through ritual, and then the effect is the result. So that ritual itself becomes the modality of giving reality to intent. That is a key thing when it comes to self-care. Like I said before, we have to give actuality, give reality to our intent of self-care through these rituals. We have to take time to sit back and relax. We have to take time to unplug for a little while. And I do mean that quite literally in some instances. You do need to unplug. Playing video games, watching movies, things like this, getting on the net, all of that. Yeah, that can be distracting, and in some ways it can be recharging. It can be because you take some time for you. You take some time to unplug from all of that. But you do need to take at least some of your self-care time to be unplugged from electronics and to connect with the outside world, or to connect with the quiet and the still, to find some peace within yourself. You need to spend some time with you. And that's very difficult to do in today's society. I don't have a magical answer, because today's society, as far as we experience in the United States and the Western societies, is not built around this concept. It's really not. Some of the European societies do engage in that kind of ritualized self-care. When I was in Scotland, I discovered that it was almost impossible to find a place to eat between the hours of about 2 and 6. Because people knock off for the afternoon. They come in, do the morning and lunch rush, and then they knock off. They go do things. They go run their errands, or they, go walk in a park, these kind of things, and then they come back. Now, yeah, there's fast food restaurants and stuff that were open, but I'm talking about the little mom and pop restaurants where you want to eat when you're touristing overseas. Finding those was very difficult in the afternoon. If you wanted to stop and have a bite and it was like 3 o'clock, you were pretty much stuck with like a Mickey D's kind of situation, because there just wasn't anything else open. All the little things that I would still say are connected to that family life would shut down mid-afternoon. Now the stores would still be open and stuff like that, but that's retail. And retail is a soulless job. Anybody who has worked retail before knows, retail isn't about self-care. Retail doesn't care about self-care. They incorporate it as a buzzword and as a modality of employee retention, but they don't embrace self-care the way that it needs to. Now, that's to say that, there are some companies that do. I'm not going to globalize and say that all of them don't. There are some that do. There are some major conglomerates that really do embrace self-care. Some of the things that they do at some of the big companies like Google and whatnot, at least in the higher up areas over there, where they give people their time to work on their own projects on company time, mandatory, breaks and stuff like that, where you go and you knock off and you do something for you. Definitely helps to make it through and improves productivity as well as just general well-being. And so that's something that we have to think about ourselves, because we don't have anybody else doing it for us. Most of us are working jobs that will take every ounce of blood and soul that it can and not even bat an eye. It's just too many of our jobs are thankless. And that's a thing. That's part of how society has grown up around us. And we have to find our way to take care of ourselves on our own. And that's what I'm really talking about here. We've got to take some time to connect. So take some time to sit in front of your altar, to connect with the gods and goddesses. Take some time in front of the family altar, in front of the ancestor altar, and just connect with the ancestors. Go outside, sit in the dirt, or sit in a chair and feet in the dirt kind of thing, or whatever. Just feel the wind about you. Feel the sun on your skin. And look for the spirits. Look for the Vetir. Talk with your grandparents, if they've passed. If they're still here, call them up and talk to them. Better yet, go visit them. Something that I don't do nearly enough, and I need to. So make those connections. Go visit a friend. Like actually visit face to face. Spend some time together. If it's of your particular culture, knock back a couple of drinks, or get together for a meal, or go out and play a game together. Go work out together, something like that. Engage in a sport together. If you're those that are into the combat sports, get together and spar. Hang out and, whether it's weapons or if it's martial arts, like physical hand-to-hand stuff, get together and do, If you're a bicyclist, go out and ride together. Make some connections, make some meaningful connections, and really connect. There's nothing beats sometimes just sitting around with a dear friend and shooting the breeze. Just talking about whatever comes to mind. It doesn't have to be work. As a matter of fact, it's best if it's not work. It's best if you talk about things that aren't tied to your stressors. It's good to go ahead and vent that. You get a little catharsis from venting your troubles and frustrations at work. But you don't want to harp on it. You don't want to focus on it too much. Get that out of the way and then move on to fun stuff. Move on to things that you enjoy. Talk about movies. Talk about video games. Talk about books. Talk about sports. Talk about, cars. Whatever it is that interests you, your hobbies, whether you're into crocheting or sewing or embroidery, whether you're into craftsmanship type stuff like woodwork and things like that. Talk about the things that matter to you. Talk about the things you enjoy and remember that you enjoy them. Because that'll spark that interest again. That will give you that urge to get back into whatever it was that you just haven't done in a while. If you haven't picked your loom up in a bit because you've just been too tired from work and from day-to-day life, talk to a friend that also enjoys it. You'll find that you've got the bug to pick the loom back up. If you're into blacksmithing and you haven't done it in forever, talk to another blacksmith buddy and all of a sudden you're going to be reaching for that hammer again. It's how we reconnect. It's how we remember who we are. We use other people as a mirror to reflect ourselves and to see ourselves through their eyes again. And it really helps to reconnect with who we are sometimes. So that's why you'll hear a lot of times people talk about leaning on friends, talking to friends and stuff like that, but they never really go into the why of it. And I find the whys to be extremely important. And the why of it here is that it lets you see yourself again from the outside in. It reminds you of who you are. And that's the essence of self-care, is remembering who you are. You're not the job. You're not the series of obligations. You're you. You are a son, daughter, you are mother, father, you are brother, sister, you are a person. You are an individual with needs and desires and a person that, enjoys things. Remember what you enjoy and engage in those things. Learn to play again. Remember what it was like to be 10 years old and did not have a care in the world. You can do it. Believe it or not, you really can. The trick is taking some time and setting aside a purpose of reconnecting. Now, it's easy to turn social gatherings into functions. It's easy to say we're going to have some people over and then get into hosting duties and things like that. That's not the same thing. That's putting on an event. That's working. Even if it's with near and dear people that you love dearly, it's still working. You need to remove as much responsibility as you can. You want to just hang out. You want to just connect. And like tribal functions all too often are, functions. They're a thing that you're putting on for a specific purpose, and there's usually ritual elements involved, etc., etc., etc. And a lot of the people that come and get to engage in that get to relax and enjoy and play and have a good time and reconnect with people. But if you're hosting, that becomes especially difficult. So you have to kind of work in some ways where you've got some downtime to reconnect and to remove at least the obligation from a period of that event so that you can chill out, But you also need stuff on the side, whether it's after the event is over, where you sit around with your tribe around the fire and just tell jokes and stories and laugh and have a good time, and there's no obligation, there's no time schedule, things like that. That's what you need. That's where you get your recharging done, Yes, it can be recharging to host these events. Yes, it can be fulfilling to put these things on. You feed that part of yourself that seeks that accomplishment. And that's a good thing. You need those things because those accomplishments help to kind of continue your drive and let you know you're doing a good job, etc., etc., etc. Those are good things. I'm not squashing that at all. By all means, put on your events, have a grand time putting on the event, but remember, you still need to unplug at some point. You need, at the end of the day, to be like, all right, the dishes can wait till tomorrow. We can clean up when the sun shines. Let's sit back and relax and just enjoy these people for a little while and relax. Relaxation is a big thing. There's a lot of ways you can go about it. Some people prefer massage. I'm not one of those guys. Some people like saunas. The ritual. You can take kind of the mentality of that and go sit out. But instead of trying to use it for divinatory purposes, you're using it for self-care purposes. You are going out and just being you and kind of disconnecting from everything else. Introverts will find that a lot of their self-care techniques are very insular and very much focused on either alone time or time spent with specific people that recharge them. So keep that in mind if you're not an introvert, but you have friends that are. Just because they want to take time away from the group to be by themselves doesn't mean that they don't like you, doesn't mean they don't want to spend time with you. They may be tending to their self-care because that's just their personality type. They need alone time. They need me time, and even dear friends that are close to them and everything can still be exhausting to them just because social interaction can be taxing for individuals that are more introverted in nature. So they're going to want to go back and relax and be by themselves for a bit. But for those of you that are introverts, it is important to get out of that shell every now and again and connect on a routine basis so that you stay connected to those people that matter to you, to the world that you've built around yourself. These are important things. Ritualize these self-care practices, and you'll begin to feel that, that hashtag happy, healthy, whole heathen that I talk about. These are ways to get to that point. We need a balance of the physical. We need a balance of the spiritual, the religious, and the social. All of these things play in together. You need to be, if you want to feel good, you need to look after getting into better health, working out, things like that. Some physical activities, exertions that will help to clear some of the toxins out of the body kind of thing, sweat a bit. It's good for you. Physical limitations vary, but you get the idea. It's something that helps to recharge you physically. You need something that helps to recharge you spiritually. That's going to be your connection to the spiritual world. So you need to connect with the ancestors, with the Vetir, wherever you feel a draw to. You need something that recharges you religiously, and that's going to be your interactions and dedications with the gods and goddesses. This is the realm of UPG, guys, all right? This is something that I'm not going to be... I can't really give you a blueprint on because it differs for everybody. And it's an area where you don't owe anybody an explanation, all right? If you want to go and sit in the yard and have a conversation with Olden, and that is how you do it, then do it. And don't worry about what anybody else thinks. Just do what you need to do to feel connected and to feel that presence. And if your connection's with Freya, or if it's with Frigga or Freud or Heimdall, whoever it is, go through your little rituals of connection and make sure that you take time to do it. I, for one, know I don't do it enough, and I can feel it when I'm not getting enough of that. I need to take some time for myself, and I can always feel it's like, all right, I need to go spend some time in my day and just connect. I don't take down any electronics. I don't take down any distractions. I just go down there and I connect. Usually I'll take down a couple of beers and I'll put one out for the divine and one for myself, and we'll share a drink and have a conversation. Now, not to say, with the whole gods of limited access thing, I don't always know that they're listening. I don't know that they're always there. But I go through it anyway, and I can usually tell when I've made some kind of a connection, at least on some level. If I'm not speaking to them directly, then I may be speaking to a spirit that is tied to them, and that still is a form of connection. So, when the spirit is drained, we don't have the drive, we don't have the energy. If we don't recharge ourselves religiously and spiritually as well as physically, then things begin to suffer in general. So it's very important that we tend to our self-care. It's very important that we tend to our mental stability, because you will begin to feel like you're going crazy if you don't take some time for yourself. And after fashion, you will be. You'll be driving yourself nuts. And that's a real thing, guys. You end up being disconnected from your own reality, and you get sucked into this little made-up fantasy world around the job and home, and you forget that there's other aspects to your real world that matter and that are good for you and that will help you to manage those more stressful parts. If you cut away all the things that help you deal with the stress and there's only the stress left, then you have nothing but you and the stress. And that is something that Western society boils us down to. The whole melting pot mentality of Western society boils down culture, boils down the differences between us, and tries to forge some kind of cultureless gray mess. And a lot of those cultural elements are our self-care. There are spiritual self-care, there are religious self-care, and it pulls those things away. And so we need those things desperately. So we have to work and we have to fight against the drive of mundanity to keep ourselves alive, to keep ourselves whole, and to feel any kind of essence of life in and of itself. So anyway, I've gone on long enough about this, but I wanted you guys to hear it because we're coming up on the holidays. We're coming up on Yule at this time of year. This one will go out second week of December, something like that. And so as we come into that time, things can get really hectic, things can get really disconnected, and Yule is a great time to kind of slow down and reconnect. It's a great time to take some time to just spend some time with folks that matter. But you have to carry it on beyond that. It's not just some New Year's resolution that I'm going to, reconnect with people and I'm going to take care of myself better this year. You have to ritualize it, and there has to be intent behind the ritual, or else you're not going to get the effect. So if you want these things to be, then you got to do it. And I'm not saying you have, in ritualization, you don't have to regiment like every Tuesday night I spend with this friend and whatnot. You end up getting bogged down in obligation, which can take away from the intent of it. Yes, there's reciprocal obligations at play, but when you try to regiment it too much and you take away the organic flow, you can lose that effect. So it's important to kind of let things just happen. You need some unscripted time. I am one that scripts everything, and so me going off script and taking unscripted time is more difficult at times, and so I really have to focus on doing that for myself and for my family, or scripting some unscripted time. It's like, look, I'm going to spend this day with my brothers. What we do is what we do. When we get together, I don't know, we're going to bring a whole bunch of stuff, and we're going to do the things that we enjoy, but we're going to do whatever it is that we want to do at that time, And so we may know that there's one thing in particular we want to do, like we want to load up Borderlands together and play and blow stuff up and laugh and have a good time. But we may stop halfway through and go outside and talk and BS for a while. We may, have some drinks. We may kick back. I don't know. It just depends. It's we make it up as we go. And that's a great thing, that organic kind of unscripted, because you're not... The obligation... The focus of this particular thing is not to do a thing. We're not getting together because we're trying to beat this game. That's not why we get together. We get together because we want to spend time together doing something we enjoy. And as long as we enjoy the time we spend together, then it's a success. Whether or not we achieve anything in particular is irrelevant. Whether or not we get any work done is irrelevant, because that's not what it's about. Like if I get together with some buddies and we go out there and work in the yard together, chopping down, trees that have been felled by storms and stuff like that, if the focus is on getting stuff cleared because you got to get stuff cleared, then that's the focus of it. But if you're just getting out there to swing an axe and spend some time with the buddies, then you get done what you get done. The important part is that you're spending time with friends and family and reconnecting. And there's that physical aspect of swinging the axe and everything that, at least from some of the guys I know, it's very bonding kind of experience. And so it's a good thing. It varies whether you're into afternoon tea, if you're into book parties where you sit and converse and talk about a book and then go off script, and before you know it you're lost in gossip. Whatever, it doesn't matter. Take the time for you. Do what you need to do, and I think you'll be happier for it in the long run. It's too easy. It's way too easy to let those things slide, and it shouldn't be that way. We shouldn't have to work towards the things that we love and enjoy. We shouldn't have to work so hard to schedule time for ourselves. It should just happen naturally. But that's not the way of things now. We've got to go through and schedule these things. We've got to go through and set time aside to tend to ourselves, because the machine is going to grind away at everything until there's just nothing left. And the machine is not built around your spiritual well-being. The machine is not built around your religious well-being. It's not built around your social well-being or your mental well-being. You got to do that for yourself. And the only way you can do that is by doing it. Action is better than inaction. So do something for yourself. Take some time, chill out, relax. But don't let it become a crutch either. Balance is good. All things in moderation, because you do still have obligations. You still have things you got to get done. We all know that. But if you find a happy balance between the two, I think you will find that fulfilling those obligations is not nearly as daunting a task as it was before. Except that in Western society, we do tend to pile on the obligations well beyond our capacity to handle them, because we can't bear the thought that we're not able to fulfill our obligations. It's a sign of weakness, as it were. Minimize some of those. Get away from some of the unnecessary obligations, and let go of some of the things that are work and that you don't realize are work. Go back to play. Go back to have some fun. Do the work that you need to do. Tend to your family. Tend to your well-being. But take some time to enjoy that. Spend some time with that family. Spend some time, enjoying the life that you work so hard to support. It's difficult to do, I know, especially when, if you're like me and you live in the country and you've got like a 45-minute commute one way. Some people it's longer than that. It's an hour, hour and a half, whatever. A lot of your time is spent in transit, and then the rest of your time is spent at work, and you don't have a whole lot of time at home. So you've really got to guard those hours that you do have for yourself and find somewhere in there for you. Find something in there that you like to do, and do it. So anyway, that's it for today. Just kind of with the holidays coming up and with everything going on up at work, I see a lot of burnout these days. And so I wanted to kind of shout out to you people that are experiencing some burnout, give some tips on how to kind of deal with some of that. And if anything, just call some attention to it, because most of us don't realize we're going through it. Most of us don't realize that this is happening around us, this is happening to us. We just kind of roll on through thinking that we've got everything handled until we don't. So you see the memes and stuff pop up online and you're like, I got this. It's not that bad. It's not that big a deal. Or, yeah, that's real nice, but I got stuff to do. Yeah, you do. Yeah, you do. But if you don't take some time to stop, eventually your body's going to stop for you. So find your time. Take your time and relax. I've got this thing where I go out like on Fridays and Saturday nights, and I sit and either watch a movie or TV show, or play on my Switch and smoke a cigar and chill out. And that's just me time. That's one of my forms. Getting sleep. Holy monkeys. Sleep is a hard thing to come by a lot of times these days, and that's one of the most important things. Don't oversleep, but get some sleep, and that's one I need to take to heart myself, because I do not get enough sleep, and it takes its toll. I can always tell when I have pushed it too far for too long. My body tells me, hey, if you don't do something, we're not going to keep doing this. We can't. So don't crash. Take your time, recharge, get back on track, and then you won't have to crash. That's the thing. You want to get away from having to crash. You want to be able to take it in doses, and that way when you do feel tired, you can rest a bit and then keep going, as opposed to going until you just can't go anymore, and then you crash out. So anyway, that's it. Thank you guys for watching today. I really appreciate it. If you've got any feedback, please, the contact information is down below, mailing address, all that fun stuff's down there, email, whatnot. I'll get back to you as soon as I can. I know I don't get back to you guys as frequently as I would like right now. Hence the essence of this video. I don't take enough time to do those things that I would like to. I would like to engage in these conversations, but I don't always have the time for it, and I need to take some time for it. I need to set some time aside for that. So I'm going to try and do that some here coming up. I won't make any promises as to exactly when, but I'm going to try, and I have the intent. I'm going to try and put some action to that intent to get the effect. So we'll see how it goes. Anyway, thank you guys. Hail. May your hearth fires burn bright. It still works. A little clicker remote. Haven't used that thing in forever. Since I got the new phone, I haven't paired it up yet. So finally did. Ha! It works. Ha! So anyway, all right. This is going to be episode 1, whatever it is. I've lost count. We're going to do the self-care thing. So, yeah. Fun and games. So yeah, anyway. Bleh. I'm delirious. I haven't gotten nearly enough sleep lately, and I moved my trash can, and it's wearing on me. So yeah, this is, for those of you that don't know, this is a really rough time of year in my industry. We deal with CPS kids, and CPS kids are all taken away from their homes and whatnot, so they're not with family. And that makes the holidays particularly rough. Not to mention there's just a ton of stuff going on, plus all the end of year stuff that we have to do, and dealing with the state, who's gotten particularly stupid about things here recently. So, it's a thing. So I stay fairly stressed out. Promise I'm going to get back to some of y'all's emails and messages. So anyway, we are going to go live here. As soon as I get some water. Right, so a little bit of water to help out, get myself back in the swing of things, wet the pipes a little bit. All right, and we are on in 3, 2, 1, let's jam. So I even got fan mail finally, but I don't think I brought it with me. Oh wait, yes I did. Ha ha ha. Tucked it away in here. So we're gonna pause. Don't you love it when you cue a prop and then you don't get the prop back? So yeah, anyway. I got it finally. Yay. I'm such a goober. All right, back in 3, 2, 1, let's jam. Pause. I've lost my train of thought. I hate when I do that. It's talking about Frithweb, bonds, all of that. So we're going to go right back in to the end of the Frithweb bond thing, and we're going to roll forward. Yeah, I'm talking my notes out. Tired, kind of burned out myself in some respects. So I'm trying to refocus here. And we're good. In 3, 2, 1, let's jam. Sorry, overhead. 3, 2, 1, let's jam. I gotta go mute that. Hang on a second. Snap, crackle, pop. Alright, back. Love those distractions, don't you? So we're back in 3, 2, 1. Let's jam.